So I don't see why one person should discriminate someone else because they're different or they're complete or from somewhere else. It doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's the one thing that we could actually change.
You talked about changing things for education and stuff. So when you're looking at education, what's the priority to teach young people if we want to stop them discriminating? What sort of things should we be looking at? Is it Sex Equality Act? Is it voting rights? What do you think specifically should be targeted in education?
Well, you can start with laws, and laws are very helpful to get rid of the extreme forms of discrimination, where you're denying the job or not letting somebody buy the house. But over the long term, to really have a common view of the world, you've got to get people doing things together. And so being in the same school together is a great way. And even within the school, you've got to make sure that kids don't get into their little clumps where they're not interacting that much. Good teachers can mix things up, assign joint projects. And I think all of us can seek out experiences where we're going to be talking and sharing and listening with people who have a different background than our own. So eventually it does come down to the individual level. But the school can get it started.
You talk about good teachers, so we have a good teacher in the room here with us at Deptford Green School. See, I'm being polite. Do introduce yourself, sir, and explain where you're from and the background.
Thank you very much, Mr. Billy Gates. I'm Naboth Okadie, Principal Bishop Okring Secondary School in Kenya, East Africa. My students wrote a letter about discrimination of children with disability caused by polio. Polio is a major problem in the East African region, and many children are now disabled and they can't access education. They have been discriminated against. Now, what's the world doing to eradicate polio so that we can save these children from such a major problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. The polio epidemic back in the 1980s was crippling over 300,000 children every year. And then the world decided to get serious about getting rid of this disease. We've made huge progress. We're down now to the final 1% of cases, less than 3,000 a year, but that's still too many. And until we get it to zero, it can come back and those numbers can go up. And so the countries that are really tough that we have left include Nigeria, where it's never gone away, and Pakistan. Up until the last year, India had always had a great number of cases, but in fact now we've gone a year with no cases in India, and so that's really great progress. It's putting pressure on those final countries to get the vaccine out, to get all the kids. So I think in the next 2 to 4 years we could finish this one, and it'll become the only disease after smallpox that the world is completely eliminated. But it'll energize everybody, and we'll go after more diseases once we get this one finished.
Talking of which, I know, Naboth, you raised there about polio. One of the other issues that was raised in many of your letters from each of the pupils around the world is the issue of disease, of HIV/AIDS. And I want to go back to Kampala because I know that, Patricia, your family has been particularly badly affected by HIV/AIDS. Just explain to us what's happened to you.
Yeah, for me, my mother died. And my little brother has AIDS, but he's on the drugs. So, yeah, he's taking the drugs every day. So he's getting well.
So your dad and your brother both have HIV, and I understand that your mother actually died from the disease.
Yes.
Well, that's an awful face of AIDS. Often if one parent gets it, it's very common that the other parent would be infected. It's at least good that some of your family members are getting those drugs. That's a case where there has been generosity, aid spending that costs about $300 a year to make those drugs available, and we want to make sure that everybody who needs them gets those drugs. And then over time, we want to get less people to be infected. We need to invent a vaccine so that we can stop this disease.
They're listening to you intently in Kampala. I know another arm raised there.
Yeah, about finding a vaccine, I'm sure it will help us very much. And if international centers are created where the youth come together, discuss global issues, basically like HIV, this will help sensitize them and empower them to participate in such campaigns.
Now, HIV has really gotten people to think about the world as one place, because HIV was a disease, and there's still some levels of it in the rich countries. For diseases like malaria that we don't have anymore, it's harder for people to relate. But although it's tragic, the fact that we read about people with HIV, or we knew people had HIV, it gives us an understanding. Why should the people in our country get these drugs, and just because you were born in another country not get those drugs? And so that's led to a lot more generosity, and hopefully that keeps up so that no one is denied the drugs.
This is NDM. Do you think that to limit the people passing on HIV could be to educate people about HIV and the different sort of reasons why people pass on HIV? Could there be any solution?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing you want to do is educate people about how it's transmitted and to avoid that risky behavior. We often make condoms available, but that alone has not been able to stop it. And so eventually a vaccine is going to be important.
Lots of hands going up in the room in front of us.
Oh, yeah, when you're talking about HIV and AIDS, when I went over to Uganda in April, I kind of witnessed it myself. But when we went there, we went to an HIV and AIDS centre, but it was really small compared to the amount of people that have it. There could be more facilities to aid people, because some people have not got enough money to get the drugs or to be able to buy contraception or to prevent it.
Yeah, the ideal, of course, with the drugs or condoms and all these tools is to make them available for free. Really, these aren't things you should have to buy, because you need it to absolutely stay alive. And so we've got billions of aid going into that, including a lot of UK and US generosity.
Well, Bill, many people on Facebook are asking how you decide where to work and which projects to support. But before I get you to answer that, we're going to come up to take a news break. Wherever you're listening around the world, this is a very special edition of World Have You Say. Bill Gates is here to answer any of your questions. You can tweet us using the hashtag WHYS. You can post at facebook.com/World Have Your Say. Or you can call us on country code 44 20 70 83 72 72. And we'll carry on talking after the latest BBC World News.
We've heard the news from the BBC. Now it's your turn.
You can post on facebook.com/World Have Your Say.
Or get in touch via Twitter at BBC_WHYS.
Welcome to World Have Your Say.
Hello, I'm Bill Gates with a special edition of World Have Your Say, live from Deptford Green School in London. I'm here to listen to pupils' solutions to helping the world's poor, with students in Kampala, Nairobi, Ekaterinburg, and Benghazi.
Well, thank you for being with us, Bill. I'm Chloe. I'm here sitting beside him with a group of students from Deptford Green School in southeast London. Bill can only be with us for another 10 minutes, so we're going to ask as many questions as we can. And just before the news, Bill, I was saying that many people on Facebook want to know how you decide where to work and which projects to support.
Well, we saw that there's a modest number of diseases that really affect the poor. Malaria, HIV, tuberculosis, diarrhea, respiratory. And so those are our big priority, to create the vaccines and get them out to kids, and that'll drastically reduce the number of kids who die and let them develop so that their full mental and physical potential is available to them and their country.
Lots of people listening around the world have got in touch with us at World Have Your Say, saying, I don't have loads of money, it's difficult economic times, but what can I do as a small person to make a difference?
Well, certainly even small amounts given to charities like Save the Children and many, many others really do go a long way. People can volunteer to help out these groups. Certainly people's political voice to encourage their government to take the few percent of the budget that goes for aid and keep that a strong priority. That's very important because we have a risk that could be cut.
We've got hands going up in Nairobi, in Ekaterinburg, but let's start in Benghazi. I know, Omar, you have a question for Bill.
Mr. Gates, do you think that we could ever have a cure to cure AIDS?
A cure for AIDS.
Absolutely. There's two things we're pursuing. One is a vaccine that, if you didn't have AIDS, would block you from ever getting it. And that's pretty far along, and I'd say in 10 to 15 years, I do think we'll have that. For somebody who already has the disease, right now you have to take the drugs the rest of your life. We don't know how to get it out of your body. We are funding some people to work on that, but there's no guarantee when we'd be able to come up with that. It would be ideal, but very tough problem.
We've also got a question in Ekaterinburg in Russia. Okay, we might be struggling with that line. As we try to get it sorted out, we'll go to Nairobi because I know there were lots of hands going up there. Who wants to ask a question in Nairobi?
Hi, it's Paulette. I would like to ask a question. How do we expose such diseases to the world?
Well, these diseases, many of them are not well known. In fact, some are called neglected diseases, the parasitic worm diseases that are really tough. Some have been gone from the rich countries for a long time. Malaria 50 years ago was up in Europe, but not now. And AIDS, although it's still here, the numbers are quite small, so people aren't thinking about it all the time. Tuberculosis, very, very rare. And so I use things like my annual letter to remind people that we still need to be focused on these problems. We get the drug companies to put their skills into them, and it's about equity. Ideally, people would travel the world more and come and actually meet the people who have the problems.
Literally only got a couple of minutes left with Bill Gates. I know lots of hands have gone up in the room here, but let's go to Kampala because they equally have questions to ask. Who wants to ask Bill a question?
The question is, what can be done to solve the problem of drug shortage in health centers? Because in Uganda, I believe that some health centers we still do not have the drugs that can prevent AIDS from spreading.
Well, the donors are supposed to make sure that we don't have drug shortages, because if you miss taking your drugs for even a week, then you're at risk of getting infections, or even those drugs could stop working. And so managing those supply chains, they generally do a very good job of that. If not, it's something they've got to improve, because patients need that daily supply.
Hi, my name's Rahila, and talking about drugs, most countries don't understand what drugs is. Like young children in education, they don't understand what drugs are, what they're made of, and so don't you think there's a way of like teaching them what drugs are and how you can help them? Yeah,
certainly. When we use the word drugs, we're talking about a broad range of things. There's the medical drugs like these AIDS drugs that literally save your life, or the vaccines, many of which you get when you're very young. Then there's the drugs that are used, for recreational use and actually cause significant problems. And, my own view is that talking to kids openly about that is